Hell yeah.
Okay, cool. So, right now, currently, Second Lieutenant Blye. Been in the Marine Corps for just a little bit over 14 years. Joined in 2006 and um, joined as an 0311 infantry rifleman and went to Iraq in 2007 with the anti-terrorism battalion. Then switched over to Second Battalion 9th Marines. Came back and then went to 28 and went to Afghanistan with them in 2009 and did a lot of workout over there. And after that 2009 deployment, I decided to do a lateral move. We call it a lat move from infantry. And I went to the intel community. So I went and became an imagery analyst. And was an imagery analyst for a little bit over 7.5 years um, before I did my transition from enlisted to officer. As an imagery analyst, I got to see the ground side as like the intel version. Also went to the air wing and spent a few years at the air wing, and then also went to the joint community and worked at a COCOM and got to see how all of the different, I guess, military organizations work together along with civilian organizations. And also did a couple of deployments as an intel Marine, so two to like the Southeast Asia area and one to Central America and that area when I was down in Miami. Um, so then I decided to do uh, the BSEP program, which is the Marine Corps Enlisted Commissioning Education Program, and become an officer. And so I did that and went to school at University of Wisconsin Milwaukee for 3 years and became a second lieutenant. So that process was pretty cool. It was definitely hard at sometimes because being like an active duty military member, one of like maybe three or four in the whole state for Marine Corps wise, and um, being around like college students or other adults and like people living just their ordinary regular lives, it was a lot different than being at a Marine Corps base, and so um, being going to school and I guess having an ROTC unit as my primary, like my parent command. Um, for me, it was just another duty station. But instead of me going to work every day and doing Marine Corps stuff, I was going to school every day and doing like school stuff, and then I would still get up and have the PT and do ROTC stuff with the midshipmen and candidates. And so then I came here, so now I'm here in Quantico, Virginia. Been here for I believe it's been 9 weeks or 10 weeks, and almost halfway through the POI, and can't wait to get done because we're frozen fox, and we just got out of the field, and we actually have to go to the field tomorrow for the next couple of days. So on deck time tomorrow is going to be, I think, like 02:30, and so
Damn.
yeah, that's gonna suck. But I don't know. It's fun. It brings me back to those days of like being in the field and going to the field. Except it doesn't suck as much when we were a young Lance Cooley,
Yeah.
out there just sucking life, like hating life. But yeah, so that's where I'm at now, and I'm looking forward to spending, I don't know, another 6 to 10 years in the Marine Corps, and seeing where it takes me. So yeah.
That's awesome, bro.
Yeah.
We're happy that you're on, man, talking to us, breaking some bread with us. So in terms of, so when I got out in 2011, man, there was all sorts of changes taking place in the Marine Corps. And I got out September 27, 2011. And, the only, like, how I keep up with the transitions in terms of, whether it's the theoretical side and the practical side, I have to read up a lot of manuals and a lot of the publications that DVIDs and Marine Corps headquarters puts out. So I know, like in 2018, when Secretary of Defense General Mattis wrote the defense strategy, like that was like the first one that had been written within 10 years in terms of like grand strategy. And I know that we switched up from, fighting terrorism, especially in 2014 when President Obama essentially said, halted all combat operations, and we went into interstate strategic competition and more great power competition. So our primary focus now is either one, creating and normalizing certain kinds of strategies and tactics within the gray zone. Also, trying to transition our entire force into understanding near-peer adversarial kinds of context. In terms of just the overall strategy, man, what can you share with us of how that transition or how all of that has happened?
Yeah, so from my, like, I guess, specific point of view, I would definitely say that we have kind of moved away from, like, I guess, fighting in the desert and like fighting against like terrorists or guerrilla style type of fighting, and just more towards like we're more concentrated on getting back to our naval heritage, our naval roots. So and that goes into the same context as like the Marine Corps just got rid of all their tanks. So um, you know, why was that such a big thing? And then why did the Marine Corps just all of a sudden get I don't know, 700 and something new AAVs, amphibious assault vehicles, and then like what is our main purpose in the greater scheme of, I guess, the military force for the United States of America? And I think just and it's just my personal view, and it's not like an entire military thought point, but mine is that like the Marine or like America, they don't really necessarily need like a Marine Corps. It's the fact that like they want a Marine Corps, and then on top of that, like it's gonna be like what is gonna be the Marine Corps' purpose, or like what is our purpose, and our purpose is to go from ship to shore, and that's our fight. And so for the last decade, 2 decades really, fighting in the desert, we've kind of strayed away from what our purpose in the greater military scheme is. And so I feel like we are just now starting to move back into that direction. And so even with some of the classes and training and stuff that we're currently doing, it's all geared towards a near peer adversary and fighting a conventional war, and fighting against people that are just as good as us.
I recently spoke with retired Major General Gronsky, who gave me a perspective on the tank battalions, and why they took it out, which I never had any beef with. I understand that, one, budgets have a lot to do with it, but also capabilities. Like the Army has, the mech power in order to deliver something like that. Also think too, the way warfare has turned out. For example, the Armenian Azerbaijan incident that has taken place recently has shown that, not that so much that tanks are kind of obsolete, but until we can come up with a pretty solid deterrence for drone capabilities, unmanned vehicles are going to be a huge issue. Um, so I understand it from that perspective. And it seemed for a while too, like the Marine Corps was going through, like, not so much as an identity crisis, but just trying to get back to its like original roots. And I know that the urban littorals are a really big issue. I've read the Marine Corps Futures Directorate, the plans for 2030 and 2045. There's a huge emphasis on the urban littorals, since like 2/3 of the world is going to be living near a body of water. And the increase in terms of population, so they're dictating that we're going to go from 7.6 billion to essentially 9 billion by 2050. And so these heavily populated areas are going to be quite challenging as the urban environment becomes, in turn, transforms into like these mega cities. And so there's all sorts of little things that culminate into why the Marine Corps has changed. It's crazy that you bring that up about how the Marine Corps is here because America wants it. I kind of go through history a little bit, talking about what happened right at the end of World War II with President Truman, and I think it was General MacArthur, which wanted to essentially take out the Marine Corps. But the 1947 Security Act kind of basically allowed us to stay. But I kind of go into this historical anecdote where I say the Marine Corps was essentially christened within the United States because we had to do a propaganda campaign. And that's why we went to, like, Mount Suribachi. We took all these photos. And so it's about public opinion, about public influence, and why the Marine Corps is still around. And recently, too, military.com released an article in which one of the Pentagon advisors, retired Army Colonel Douglas McGregor, basically said they wanted to take out the Marine Corps. And I mean, it's understandable, like, why they would view it that way in terms of like the budgets and stuff like that. We spend $700 billion on defense. I just don't think that the Army has the capability to kind of absorb, one, the lineage, and two, just the capability and knowledge from one specific branch. Maybe in another 50 years or so, depending on how essentially American economics and our institutions kind of carry its way through this kind of period of conflict. Lots of challenges.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah. I would definitely say that, like, I think that, like, Marine Corps itself in general, like, we definitely stand out amongst all of our military brethren, when it comes to, like, what we do, how we do it, and what we are capable of doing. There's a reason why we're the first to fight, or the smallest military force, but we have to work with half the stuff that all the other services do. So I don't think that anyone would ever be able to say that, oh yeah, you can just replace the Marine Corps with the Army, because granted, the Army might be able to do stuff that we do. We do it a lot more efficiently, I feel, quicker, and in some cases, depending on what it is, even better.
Yeah. Reading that Marine Corps Future Director, man, there's a portion in there. It's one of the scenarios. So, like, a lot of folks don't realize that a lot of, like, the Warfighting Lab and a lot of other intelligence organizations within the United States government hire creative writers to write up science fiction. And a lot of it is to kind of understand the potential risks that lay ahead. And one of the scenarios, man, it's pretty bleak, but it essentially puts the United States right at the center of this specific scenario. And that's the scenario that we don't want to go into, which is essentially the United States basically has to decrease its buffer zone in terms of its allies and its conflicts and the situation that it finds itself geopolitically. And while you have China coming into play in terms of like the Belt and Road Initiative, providing all this economic incentive, the United States is merely focusing on its internal problems. And I think that's like when I read up on the Centers for Strategic Studies, a lot of the rhetoric that's coming out from those organizations is saying that there needs to be a whole of government, whole of society effort in order to kind of deter those scenarios in which essentially the United States just focuses primarily on its own issues. And that's kind of a big deal to me because what I've been sharing with Polly for the past, I think, few weeks now. One of the greatest national security concerns for me is what I call social, epigenetic, and mimetic entropy. And essentially that we're just becoming less and less organized as the flow of information and influence is overwhelming the American consciousness about specific kinds of narratives. And one of those narratives being that the United States is divided. So Ajit Maan, and I think I've talked to you about Ajit Maan, she's kind of the director of an organization called Narrative Strategies, and they focus on how to effectively work with indigenous populations or certain kinds of conflicts where they provide specific kinds of narratives. For example, Russia's information operations on the United States goes like this. Russia wants the world to see them as this honorable, strong country. And the narrative that they're using is they're showcasing and projecting all the issues that are wrong with the United States. And so that's kind of like why we get this like picture of Putin, riding a horse or him still being, notable. And so these narratives, along with their IO campaign within our information ecology, really, really do a lot of damage to a lot of the whole of government efforts being put into practice, making recruitment a huge issue. And as one of the things I shared with Polly too, is that it's like 60% of like 40 million young Americans don't have the IQ or the physical ability to operate in some of these environments. And I'm not, we're not trying to justify war or conflict, but just the overall economics of things. You need to be a healthy individual in order to be a conducive member of your society and your community. So there's a lot of challenges, man, that just I'm afraid of in terms of just like I fear because I had a stake in this process. And I also see too that if our institutions are suffering in terms of just getting the right bodies in there, then I can't even imagine, the outpouring, the influx of individuals coming back into society when we don't have the proper infrastructure, and one of those infrastructures being mental health. So some huge challenges, man.
Yeah, most definitely. So I guess we all know, or maybe like the 22 thing, 22 suicides a day, committed, by veterans, is like a big thing. But being in the military, you hear about it a lot, but you don't really, I guess, at least from my point of view, like you hear about it a lot, but you never really saw it a lot. I saw it a lot when I was at school, like in the civilian sector, and like around civilians. I saw it there a lot because I spent a lot of time at the Maverick, which is at UWM Milwaukee. It's the Military and Veterans Resource Center. And being there, the people that would come there, straight from the Army or the Navy or the Marine Corps or the Air Force or whatever, and like they come from a military organization and now they are dumped into like a civilian lifestyle. Like that transition is extremely hard for a lot of people. And for me, I always thought like, man, that would be like really hard to go from being in a very structured lifestyle to a very, I guess, not unorganized, but just like nothing's clear from like day to day, or you're just really living from day to day. You have like an end goal, like, oh, I need to graduate, or oh, I need to, go to work or something like that. But that's about it. And so like living in or and around civilians kind of really tuned me into like the mental health for veterans all around, and like how, from what I saw, one of the best things was like actually talking to people, like talk to other veterans, or just other people in general, like let people know how you feel. Because, in the Marine Corps, or the military in general, it's kind of like you don't want to talk about things because you don't want to seem soft or like simple minded or whatever it is. But like in all reality, talking about things makes that weight less on your shoulders, like that weight's always going to be there, but you expressing yourself about it and physically talking to other people, like it definitely helps out a lot of people, and I could see that like every day when you go into like the Maverick and then you see like the same people in there. So like the people that they have working there, like we're all veterans. So like we had a guy named Groovy, Carlos, and Melinda, like they were like in charge of the Maverick, like they were all veterans somehow. And had went through the same process and realized, hey, we need to figure out like, hey, this is something that we need to work with. And like they did an excellent job there. My only complaint would be that it was like too small, because there was like a lot of veterans, there, and it was always packed, and it was just like a small room. But they did an excellent job as far as like helping veterans by just talking and communicating, and like giving them the inside scoop of things that like people that might be coming from high school, going into college, or coming from a certain lifestyle, they might already know versus like military personnel coming from like a military organization, being out of the school for 4, 10, 15, 20, 24 years, and like 35 years old, and you're trying to get back in the civilian side or civilian life, and it's like really hard. And so that stress of like, oh, I have to do this, oh, I have to do this, or this doesn't make sense. Like that stress really gets to people, but when you have other people to talk to about it and other people that are willing to help you, like it definitely helps, like relieve some of that stress. So that was definitely a big thing that I saw living in the civilian side.
So I'm gonna lead this, and I know Polly has some questions, and I think this is gonna be a good segue into it. So I know, like in 2017, they did a series of reports, and they published it in the Marine Corps Times, and it's like the Marine Corps from, I think, like 2014 to like 2017 dropped down from like 44,000 combat veterans to like 17,000, and then I'm pretty sure that number has decreased. Bro, how is it, like, you got to be a dinosaur or something, but how is it that, like, what's the experience like now, you being one of those kinds of individuals among an entire new generation of young men and women who carry that title now?
Yeah, I would say, and I like there's I think 3 or 4 other prior to my platoon. Um, but like I would say it's definitely challenging. It's not challenging, but it's just different. Because you're around people that they grew up in a time when we were like out there war fighting. So 2009, we're out there, you know, out there war fighting and doing stuff. They were like, you know, in middle school. And so like, it was like it's different. Like their perspective on life is completely different than what like I guess my perspective is now. One, from like being an older individual, and then having a family and having kids, to like oh, like I'm like at least 12 years older than all the other people that I'm here with, and so like it's like it's like a mental thing, that in that aspect, and then like the other part of it is like the physical aspect. Like 34 years old, and like all the people that I'm here with are like 21, 22, 23, 24 years old. Some are like 25, but like I'm like a decade older than all of them. But we still got to keep up and still got to do all this stuff. And so like uh, it's like for me at least, you got to definitely stay on top of like the physical and mental aspect of everything. Because I can see how people could easily be like, you know what, whatever. Like I'm just gonna just let it ride and I guess fall off the horse, or not be as prepared as you have to be because um, now the difference between being, I would say, like an officer and like a staff NCO is like, especially an upcoming officer, I have to be prepared at all times to kind of do anything, especially coming from, being a second lieutenant and going into the fleet, and then versus like being like a staff NCO and like I only have to worry about my little piece of the pie. Um, so it's kind of what I asked for, and that's kind of what I wanted. But that I guess mental, I guess, change from enlisted to officer, and also the generational gap between the people that I call my peers now is like very huge, and it's constantly evolving and constantly changing. So it's just one of those things you just gotta go with the flow. You gotta work with it.
Yeah, the one thing I kind of wanted to, to ask, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is just as far as these, these younger Marines that are coming in and joining now. Obviously, probably most of them, the Afghanistan war was tapering off when they decided to join, or could have already, depending on when they entered. What is a lot of their motivation to wanting to join, especially the Marine Corps, in a time where there's not a serious conflict going on. I know for probably a lot of us when we joined, right in the middle of the war. So we're like, obviously we all picked the infantry and we knew what we were going to do. So, I know you're an officer now and, they obviously made that decision, but what's the motivating factor for a lot of them if you've talked to them about it?
Yeah, I've talked to a few people about it. I would just say that the greater motivation to them, and especially a lot of them, has been like um, the people that they've talked to, like the military people that they've talked to. So like a lot of people that are here that I've spoken to about this topic, they know people that are in the military, and those people that they knew were, I guess, either very structured, or like very motivated about being like hoorah, like American type, and so
Hmm.
like love the country, very patriotic, I guess is a better word for it,
Yeah.
and like structured. And I guess we can see now how like in America, how like we talked about before, like the organization is not how I guess it used to be, because there's such that influx of information that we're getting from all avenues around us, and so everything's kind of like discombobulated. And so I guess people that want more structure, people that want to be a part of something bigger,
Hmm.
it's like that's one of the main things that they always talk about. Like, hey, they just want to be in an organization where they want to be around other like-minded people that are in a structured environment, and people are like motivating each other to push forward.
Yeah.
And I talked to them about that because I'm like, hey, like you guys want to be infantry, like there's not like a major conflict going on. So like, what are you gonna like? What do you are thinking? And a lot of they just want to go out there and lead Marines. And so
Yeah.
it's surprising to me because I know like how when we joined, I'm like I want to join the Marine Corps and be an 0311 because I want to go and I want to get after the bad guys. Like I want to go out there and get it. You know. And so I can't imagine like joining the Marine Corps now and being like, oh yeah, I just want to just go out and lead Marines and like be an 03 and then maybe go to war or something like that.
Yeah.
But they're here, and you know, it's motivating from my side. 'Cause I'm like, wow, that's good, Um, but it's just I guess what it is. So
Yeah, I can only imagine how a lot of these guys, especially the younger guys, that you're with, and females, of course, that probably how much respect they have for you. Because I just remember when I was a junior Marine, when I finally got to the infantry, supermoto, and all this, of course, after our time in, and we ended up going to the big troop surge in Afghanistan in '09. That was a pretty big deal at the time, comparatively speaking to previous wars and conflicts. might not hold up against any of that. But for us in our time, it kind of to me related to the push into Iraq. I know we were already in Afghanistan, but that was really when things started popping off over there. And I remember as a junior Marine, just looking at the guys, some of the sergeants and staff NCOs when I was, a young guy that had been to the invasion of Iraq and, push Nazarene and all these places, and just the amount of respect that I had for them, knowing that they did that. Those iconic moments that everyone saw. I was still in high school at the time when the invasion of Iraq was going on, and I just remember seeing it on TV, and then I'm looking at my staff NCOs and sergeants that were there, and I'm like, damn, like I feel like probably a lot of the guys that you're with probably look to you that way. Do you think they have there's a different level of respect for you being your age and in the position you're
Oh
in?
yeah, oh yeah, most definitely. There's definitely that level of I guess like implicit respect and explicit respect that is given to me from a lot of my peers and even some of my superiors, like
Yeah.
my captains and even other first lieutenants, stuff like they've only been in the Marine Corps for like 8, 10, 11 years, 12 years.
Right.
I've been in the Marine Corps for 14 years. They are a captain, they've been in it for 10 years, and like they're leading me and like telling me, hey, this is how you should be doing this and doing that. And I like a lot of times I can kind of sense like a little bit of nervousness, but it's mostly just out of respect. And for me, from my end, I'm like I want to just be good at what I do. And so if I'm messed up, and I want you to tell me that I'm messed up, so because I want to be better. But they also are there to make sure that we know what we're supposed to be doing. So
Mhm.
that respect, it goes both ways. Um, Even though I know like, hey, I've been in the Marine Corps a lot longer than you have, but it is what it is. So I can definitely see it, and especially from like my peers and stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure they're probably glad to have you around just from your experience alone for sure.
Oh yeah.
I think it's got to be pretty uncommon what you decided to do as far as going, fully commissioned. And I think it was more common while we were in. I remember, enlisted going, uh, to become warrant officers, in that the way they would typically do it, or like that's how the gunners became gunners because they were typically from infantry background and then wanted to transition. I do think Lieutenant Helminski, I think he was a captain before the time we got out. I think he was the only one I ever personally knew that was an enlisted infantry marine and then decided to go um, officer. I think he was third platoon when I first got to Fox 28. He was third platoon's platoon commander. So I I think that's probably a pretty. Do you know anyone else
Okay.
that's done? Do you personally know anyone else that's done that?
So I didn't meet my first knee sepper until I did my lat move. Like I didn't know of a knee sepper until I did my lat move in the intel community, and it was actually my second OIC once I got to the air wing. So at the MFA 224, um, my OIC then was First Lieutenant Holloway, now Captain Holloway. He was a knee snapper. I was like, oh, he's a first lieutenant. You see him in camis, blah, 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 first lieutenant, okay. And then they come in on Fridays, and now, we have to, every Friday or every other Friday or every first Friday, you have to wear your Charlies. And he's like, oh, wow, like he got a stack. And like, oh,
Yeah.
he must have been a prior. And then it's like, oh, okay, so now we can like, have a little bit more, I guess, lead man like being able to talk to him and ask him different stuff.
Yeah.
He came from an aviation background. He was, working in an aviation squadron before, and then there's Lisa package, and he came back as an air intel officer. And so he was really like my very first person that I knew that was a NESAPer, and he was the one that talked to me about it because then I was a sergeant then at the time, and at 7 years in, never even thought about becoming an officer. It never crossed my mind, hey, you should be an officer. And then he was like, hey man, you would make a really good officer. Uh, you know, VSAT program is out there, and a lot of people don't try it,
Yeah.
but it's there for a reason to
Right.
have enlisted Marines come over to be officers. I was like, okay, sir, yeah, that sounds good. And that was in like I don't know, that was like when I was 7 years in, and it wasn't until I think 2 years later after I had left um, Buford from the MFA 224 to go to Southcom in Miami that I really started thinking about it because then I was like working every single day with officers. Like it was
Right.
like I was working with like lieutenant colonels and first like 1-star generals and
Yeah.
like majors like on a daily basis. And like, oh hey, like you're pretty proficient at doing stuff, doing this stuff, blah blah blah. Like you ever thought about me seven? I was like, yeah, I remember Captain Holloway talking to me about it. And so it was then whenever I decided like, hey, I really need to work on I need to choose. And I made a decision like, hey, I want to try out for it. And that kind of changed my entire outlook on life because growing up, I never liked going to school. Like I adamantly hated going to school.
Yeah.
From like middle school to high school, I was like, I don't like school at all. And
Yeah.
so getting back into the mindset and being married and then being a parent and having to be like, okay, I gotta, do the best I can and, at least try. Like I had to, retake my ASVAB, I had to retake my
Wow.
SATs, I had to retake all that stuff. And like, it took me almost a year to be able to do that because I was like, I retook the ASVAB and the SAT and I didn't get the score that I needed. And
Right.
so then my dad, my dad was in Vietnam. He deployed to Vietnam twice. He was in the army. And
Oh
he's like,
wow.
if you want anything bad enough, then you'll work for it. He's like, if you suck at taking tests, then maybe you need a tutor. And so I was like, okay, I was thinking about it, and I was like, okay, let me go to FIU, Florida International University, and look for some tutors. Sure enough, there's a girl there. And she's like, yeah, we do ASVAB and SAT testing study sessions. And she's like, all right, you can, pay for this. And like, I'm like, initially when I hear like pay for something, I'm like, I don't know if I want to pay for this. But
Right.
it checked out to be one of the best investments that I ever made because actually she helped me understand things from a fundamental level because like I was just really bad at like school stuff. But she helped me pass, and like I went and I took the ASVAB on a Friday, and then I took the SAT on a Saturday. And I think this was like after 2.5 months, it was like 10 weeks of studying with her twice a week. Um, and I got the score that I needed. Like I surpassed the minimum score. And
Nice.
so it was then that like I was like, put in my visa package and did it. But yeah, as far as like people that I knew as officers, um, that were reset or enlisted before, there's really only that one, and he talked to me about being a reset, and lo and behold, I chose this
Yeah.
lifestyle.
That's cool, man.
Bro, I
Definitely.
can relate about school, man. Dude, I got out and in 2012, I went into the University of North Carolina in Wilmington, bro. And I had this like grand plan that I was going to go into nursing because I had all this like medical, background that I had. Dude, I roll into a bio 201 class and I'm like, hold up. I haven't been in school in 6 years. I was like, I don't belong here. So I like had to jump around with my majors, man, to find something that I clicked with. And even now it's still a challenge. Like I hate taking tests. Like test is like I'd rather write, a 30-page report on, whatever subject
Yeah,
than having to memorize. I'm just very aversive to it, and I hate it. I always
yeah,
tell folks too,
yeah.
man, I'm a horrible student, man. I was like, if I don't see a need for it or it's not necessary for me to take it, then I'm not going to deal with it,
Yeah,
man.
So how does it
yeah,
feel
yes,
be how does it feel being 30 something and having to hump weight?
man. So like, so like the I guess it sucks. It really sucks. We've done like our 3 mile hike and we've done our 6 mile hike. We got like our 9 mile hike coming up. But like it sucks, man, because like preparation for being an older person is key. Like it's the most important part of like doing hikes because like we're doing hikes with like 70, 80, 100 pounds,
Yeah.
and these movements are not just like on the road. Like these movements are like on trails, up the
Right.
mountain, down the mountain, like, and it's hard. Um, but the pain that you feel, or that at least an older person feels, is like familiar, So I
Right.
guess that would be the only like good thing is that like I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to hurt that much
Yeah.
versus somebody that's like this is their first time doing it and they're like, oh gosh, I am broke the F off,
Right.
like it really, really is like I guess it can play with your mind, if that's the first time you feel pain like that.
Yeah.
But I'm not gonna lie, man, it definitely sucks to be hiking, um, you know, 6 miles with 80 pounds on your back,
Right.
up the hill, down the hill, walking over rocks, like twisting your ankles, and like,
Yeah,
yeah,
I can only
little
imagine. I mean,
little movement.
especially somebody like you that had the background you did and already kind of put your body through a lot on your deployments and stuff, and now you're kind of back in the
Yeah,
saddle with it. So I'm sure that's
yeah,
super enjoyable. But yeah, that's cool, man.
yeah.
How are your feet, man?
Even like what's that?
I said, how are your feet? Like your feet are.
Well, that's a part of the preparation thing that I tell you. Like preparation for being an older person in the military, and have already been broke the F off, is key because like I just have to make sure I take care of myself like fully. Like my
Yeah.
feet, I would say my feet are good, but I make sure that I take care of them. Like I soak them, Epsom salt, I scrub them. I do little foot exercises. Like a thing that I've also noticed now in the Marine Corps that wasn't around when we were in the Marine Corps is like stretching and like knowing how to stretch and like
Mhm.
doing different types of stretches and like actually putting time in the work period or in the workouts for stretching and then not just doing crazy stuff, back to back to back to back. Like they actually, care more about your body or want you to care more about your body. And so we actually, had to take classes on like how to stretch, classes on how to roll, stuff like that. That way you're just more in tune and educated. Like, hey, this is what I should do, before I go on a hike, after I go on a hike, and then like the next following days, afterwards. And that's definitely a big thing. That's also part of the preparation. Um, but it like my feet are good. Um, I just have to like for me personally, just make sure that my ankles are strong because when we're walking, up the hill or down the hill or across routes, or stuff like that, like all that stuff's uneven. And when you got weight on your back, like any little twist of your feet or whatever, it can take you out of the game.
Yeah.
And so it definitely sucks. So it is what it is. But so far, I've been good on it. My biggest thing here at TDS at the basic school has been the quizzes. Taking the quizzes, just because it's the same thing as what you're saying, like taking tests. Like I just suck at taking tests. And then like you get a very very small amount of time to answer the questions, and I'm like, and okay, I'm like, okay, all right, I got it, and then like they're like, nope, it's in, it's done, and so like I can like recall the information, but it takes. I feel like my OODA loop is a lot slower in like recalling the information, and so I just got to make sure that what I'm doing or saying is correct. And so like that's probably been like my biggest hiccup is like the academic part of like being here, but physically so far, knock on wood, I've been good, but I've also stayed prepared as far as like keeping my body healthy and making sure that like I stretch and all that stuff.
So I got another question, man. How do you convey the kind of reality of combat to kind of the uninitiated, inexperienced individuals? Because that's got to be a mind like to be a trip, man, to try to
Have
explain.
have you yeah have you gotten into that with anyone like Any guys that were pretty green as far as what you've
Yeah,
experienced?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And this comes from like all levels. Like it comes from my peers, almost on a daily basis. When it like I am the type of person being here. Like I'm an open book, because I want to be as informative as possible and help people in any way that I can. Like just kind of give people a heads up. And so like when they ask me a question like, "Hey, is this kind of similar to combat?" I'm like, "Nah, this is nothing like combat." Or like when we do our movements, like with our day pack and our flak and Kevlar and our weapon, and we do movements, 5 miles, 6 miles. I'm like, okay, yeah, this might be something similar to like ordinary patrol that we would do on a daily basis, except it's not 130 degrees outside,
Yeah.
you know, and you're not walking through like a cornfield or whatever. But I get that question a lot, and I just be straight up, I'm just straight up with them, whenever it comes to like any questions or like any of my answers that I give them, because they always ask me, hey, like how does this compare to combat, or how is this, I guess, compared to like the real Marine Corps? Like, do people really do this in the Marine Corps? Is this just like a schooling type of thing?
Mhm.
And so I just give my honest opinion and let them know, like, yeah, this is like combat, or no, this is nothing like combat. Or like, another thing that they always ask is like, hey, tell me a story. And so like, they'll ask me something and like I'll like have to tell the entire like squad, my entire squad, or like whoever's listening in the platoon, like a story when we're out in the field or something, about one day or something like that. But like,
Dude, what
you
happened
know,
to you? Have you ever told the story? I was thinking about this the other day, even before Herrera said you hit him up. Didn't you get stuck when you were at damn, what the hell was the name of that PB you guys were at in '09?
Chevron,
Jugram. Y'all had like a
yeah,
swimming hole inside there. Didn't you get stuck with a needle or something and you had to get sent back to
yeah,
what happened with that? What did they do to you after they
yeah.
said So tell the
so
whole
so
story. So
uh
tell
so
tell the
yeah, so
whole
like
story. Tell the whole story real quick.
okay, so we were police calling the fob, right? And so like this didn't happen in the swimming hole, but it happened on like the other side. So like in fob jug room, we have like it was a small, fob, and we had like our side, and we had a little swimming hole, and then on the other side we had like where the ANA stayed at. And so as you guys know, like the ANA, they just during that time, like they were always like out of this world. Like they were always like smoking something or doing something or whatever, whatever. So like they had needles and stuff all over the place. And so like one day we were police calling, like we had police call our side, and then we were police calling the other side of the fob. And I went to go pick up a needle, and I saw that it was a needle, but I didn't see anything on the tip of it. And
Mhm.
so I went to go and pick up the needle, and long and behold, like this needle stuck like all the way in my finger. And I was like,
Oh,
oh crap, like I just got stuck with a dirty needle.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I forgot, I think it was Corporal Clark that was with me. And he was like, dude, did you just get stuck by that needle? Because like as soon as it happened and it went in, like I thought maybe it was just a thorn. And then I pulled it up and his needles was sticking out of my finger. I'm like, oh crap. And he's like,
Yeah.
dude, you just got stuck by a needle. And like I pull it out really quick, and he's like, dude, like you could get AIDS or something like that.
Oh
Yeah.
And
man.
like I'm like all types of stuff started going through my head, and especially during that time, like we're in the thick of it. And I'm like, I don't want to be the person that like deploys, comes to Afghanistan, and then catches AIDS or HIV or something like that, or
Right,
like
right.
I get like like opium poisoning or something like that in my body. And so I went and told my sergeant, or, my squad leader, Sergeant Pratt at the time, the rest of the dead, went and told him, and he's like, you gotta be
Oh
after
man.
this. And he's like, oh crap. And so we went and talked to the platoon sergeant, Staff Sergeant Garrett, and Lieutenant Oliver, and they're like, dude, you're gonna have to go to back to the
Uh,
main base
yeah.
And
and
Delhi.
like get medevac. And I'm like, oh man, like this is like
Quit.
had to leave. And I was a saw gunner. They called up the 9 line MD and driven back. Yeah, and it ended up being like an okay time because like when I went back, I just went and stayed in the medical wing or whatever. and they took my blood. They took like I don't know 6 or 7 vials of blood from me and tested for all types of stuff. And they're like, hey, if you hear something back, then that means that something's wrong. And so the nurses were like, hopefully you don't hear anything else from us. But yeah, I stayed there I think for like 2 or 3 days, and then was able to come back, and yeah, that was about it. But it was definitely like a nervous like 4 or 5 days overall of like, oh man, like I could be screwed up.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
remember hearing about that when we were over there, and because I wasn't with you guys obviously, but and I was just like, what? Like what happened to him? But I never heard anything that happened after that, so I figured you were all right from it. But yeah, that's crazy.
yeah,
Hey, Blythe,
yeah,
you
yeah.
guys were on the western side, right? Like of the canal, Little Juggum, right?
Yeah, they were like to the they were
Yeah,
to the northwest, I believe. They were like northwest of where Hassanabad was, I believe.
yeah, 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 yeah. And like so, like the escalated like exponentially, and they're like, hey, you might get a purple.
You might get a
But they were just like screwing with me because like catch something. And then the other side of that was that like I didn't want to leave my guy there together through thick and thin. And, like I didn't want to be the one person. I start from little. I'm like start little, like right through it. So as soon as we would get back from a patrol or something, you could like cool off inside the little water hole. You know, so that part was cool.
Bro, do you remember? Were you there whenever we took Bridge 1, at the petrol station, and we got in that tick,
Uh
and they called in that gun run,
oh yeah,
bro?
yeah.
So
Definitely.
So I remember, bro. I was with first platoon, and we were chilling, man. And dude, next thing you know, we have rounds freaking popping. The mud head over, and we didn't know that y'all were like. We knew that something was going down, but we didn't know that we couldn't shoot back because of friendlies were adjacent to us, and so we were like stuck in the middle receiving rounds from your gunfight. What happened, man? I've always wanted to know what happened.
So I was to the, I guess, right hand side of like, and that kind of initiated like that little that firefight, and so like we were like going back and forth, and I don't think at the time like anybody even knew that you guys were where you guys were at, because like it was just like we could physically see like, oh, somebody's there, and then like they started shooting at us, and then we just started returning fire. And so I just remember like laying down hate and discontent during that time. But even then you're just like shooting at muzzle flashes or like shooting at that general vicinity. Yeah, that was a crazy time. Well, I think the whole time there was a crazy time. But
Yeah,
So what are you in a barracks right now?
yeah. So I'm in a barracks room right now. Yeah. So I decided to leave the family, the wife and kids, in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
That's where my wife is from.
Right.
Because like this, TBS. Normally TBS is 6 months long, but because of the whole COVID thing, it's like 7 months long now. Because we have like 2 periods of time where we have to do a restriction of movement, which is basically you are quarantined to your room. So like when we first got here, we had to do 2 weeks, 14 days, where you stay in your room for 14 days. And like the only time, like we get 1 hour out in the yard or 1 hour to go like PT. And it's like as a platoon, you go PT for 1 hour and then you come back and then you stay in your room for the rest of the 23 hours. Yeah, so we have to do that in the beginning. And then also we'll have to do it when we come back from Christmas. We'll have to do it. So yeah. So, but yeah, now like I'm here in my barracks room. Grant, the officer barracks rooms are a lot nicer than like our barracks rooms. At the barracks, like got nice showers, like our own sinks and beds and stuff. Like it's really nice. It's not too bad. So like a lot of people are like, oh man, this is kind of crappy. And I'm like, not really. It's really not that bad. But yeah, that's this is like my barracks room, located in Graves Hall, here in Canton Barracks. So
what do you hope to do? You know, when you finish, what kind of a unit? Do you get to request what kind of unit you want to go to, or?
Yeah, so like you get throughout the entire time here, you get to say, hey, like I would like to be an infantry officer or AAV officer or intel officer, depending on like what intel it is. And so like the 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 overall the overarching I guess consensus is that you have to list all I think 22 MOSs in order of like, hey, this is what I would like to do versus like this is what I absolutely do not want to do. Um, but they said that I think it's like 88% of the people here that put like they get one of their top five choices. And so, you know, for me, like my top five choices are AAV officer, combat engineer officer, air intel, logistics, and maybe low air altitude defense officer, something like that. So,
Yeah.
but I'm really hoping like either AAV or combat engineer officer for like what I would like to do. So like that's what I can request to do. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like greater
Right.
needs, like what the Marine Corps needs. So
Yeah. Well, that's cool, man.
yeah, yeah. So I don't want to go back to infantry. Not not now.
I don't blame you. Even though they would probably love to have you there, but yeah, I get
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They go through and they're like, hey, uh, let's get some of your infantry knowledge on how you think we should conduct this attack. And I'm like, let's just go and destroy them. They're like, hey, you need to write an order. And I'm like, write an order? Like, I don't know. Let's just go. Go
Yeah.
forth and conquer. Close with and destroy the enemy.
Yeah.
But yeah. So yeah, I'm hoping to like I want to do something to where like I'm gonna be working like with Marines and I want to be out in the field doing stuff. But like just getting old, man. I don't want to be humping around 100 pounds, 130 pounds on my back. You know, I don't want to be walking everywhere. So you know, that's why like my top two is like AAV and combat engineer. So hopefully I can get something that I would like.
Yeah, that's cool. And you
Yeah.
said you plan to stay another 6 years or so, you think? You're hoping, or?
Yeah, yeah. So like my contract initially is for 6 years, and then that'll put me at 20. And then if I want to retire as an officer, then I'll have to stay in like the entire term. Is you have to if you want to retire as an officer, you have to be in for at least you have to be an officer for at least 10 years.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
so it'll either be like at 20 years, so in 6 more years. If I did retire, then it would be at my gunnery sergeant rank, and then with time of service
Right.
at 20 years. Versus if I stayed in for an additional 4 years and made it.
Barracks Wi-Fi, dog.
Yeah, I know. Like, ain't all that good.
Do you remember that like barracks Wi-Fi? We had to pay like $20 for
It
like
was
2 days.
terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah, hey, so they got the same thing here. It's just a new name. They call it
I got a screenshot.
Yo, I something like that. I'm gonna finish this. Crappy. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want you letting all the secrets out, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Probably listening right now, like, okay, he's getting a little bit too thick.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's insane. So what was the hardest part about going through OCS?
Um, Going through OCS, the hardest part was just staying humble.
Oh,
Because you know, like then I was a staff sergeant at the time, and so like my sergeant instructors were staff sergeants and gunnies, and so like them like knowing that I was a prior, they kind of knew, and so like they didn't like really try to like crap on me too much or you know make my life like too crazy, but they would like kind of test me every once in a while.
it's just like a deployment, bro, with comms.
Yeah, no kidding.
Bro, every time we would get ICOM chatters, dude, immediately our comms would start breaking up. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh god. But we used to have some dumb ICOMs like the ice cream party is about to start.
Oh yeah.
Dude,
Yeah, did you? Hey, they're bringing the watermelons or whatever. I forget they had all kind of crazy terms for the shit.
Okay. Can you
Yeah,
guys hear me?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
No,
No,
you're
no,
Yeah.
no.
good.
It's all good, man. It's
It
all
ain't
good.
your fault, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll put
So.
straight out of the barracks, dude, when we post this up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Coming from Graves Hall, room 105, straight out of the breaks.
So
Yeah.
you were saying you had to stay humble whenever these guys
Yeah.
were like on you.
Yeah. Just had to stay humble, and they're like, scream louder, like, it
Oh,
was like that, in like the inner feeling of being like wanting to turn around and like say something, like it
Yeah.
was hard. It was really really hard. Uh, and then yeah, it was just hard. And then a lot of them actually, none of my sergeant instructors were like infantry or anything like that. They were all like admin or logistics or something like that. Um, and so, yeah, that was probably not probably that was the hardest part of going to OCS. Like the physical aspect, I felt like it was good. Like I was good because I came from Miami. Out there, I would, run 4 miles a day, like run 2 miles to the police station, swim 8 laps, and then run 2 miles back. Boots, and workout clothing. And so like I was like in pretty good shape, and so like that wasn't too hard of a thing. Like that, staying humble, and then like the weather change was probably like a big thing because like I came from 70-degree weather to like 30 degrees and snowing, here in Quantico, Virginia.
Yeah.
And like that part sucked a lot, but like I was in pretty good shape, and so that part wasn't too hard. So, but yeah,
did you have to deal with a lot of ego?
yes. And that also went into like the being humble aspect because a lot of them were like, you don't know what it's like to be in the Marine Corps, like you don't know what it's like to do this or do that, and blah blah. And I'm thinking to myself like, but do I? Like I think I do, and I'm pretty sure you don't know what it's like actually feel the suck, you know.
Yeah.
But like I've never been a person to kind of like boast too much or be like I'm better than you or like anything like that. I just try to stay humble like anyways. Um, but yeah, that's just some people like that. And that's just their personality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gnarly, man. I went through whips, which is like World Protective Services when I was contracting, and so
Hmm.
it's like a 2.5 month process. And dude, you if you muzzle flash somebody, dude, you're kicked out. Like the rules are hardcore, and
Wow.
dude, dealing with dudes from all sorts of backgrounds, man, that was a trip. Uh, I was so thankful that I had like all the 3 tours under my belt, and then I had the college experience so that my analytical thinking was on point, and it
Yeah.
gave me a competitive edge, dude, against all the other candidates. But dude, that was a trip too, man. Just a bunch of enlisted dudes with a bunch of war stories, thinking they're gonna be Jason Bourne out there, bro. That was a trip, man.
Yeah. 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 Um, so like being here, like I said, like I only have like I think three other priors in my platoon. Um, like they're all pretty good. Like none of them were infantry. Um, I do know one other infantry guy that I went to OCS with. He was infantry before he went on one pump to Afghanistan before also. Um, and he's also here with me now. I think it's, Second Lieutenant Clark. And so, but as far as like egos, like our egos are pretty chill. But like when you get with other people that are just like gung ho all the time and are like, I want to be the alpha, then like sometimes you just gotta regulate and be like, hey, like chill out a little bit before things escalate. And so that's it's just a thing. Like I don't turn it on unless it has to be turned on. Just because I'm not just naturally like that all the time. But if it needs to be, then it'll happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, it's not too. I'm just down here in just north of Charlotte, North Carolina. So
Okay.
maybe about 4 hours. It was pretty nice out today. You got some decent weather I feel
I
like,
know, I know. I wish we would have been in the field now because like
yeah,
when we were in the field a few days ago, it
it
was
was
like,
cold last week. Yeah, it got
yeah,
cold.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Waking up in your
So what?
sleeping bag.
How long were you guys out for in the field?
It was 3 days, 3 days, and
Okay.
so it wasn't too bad, but it was just long and monotonous. And like
Right.
during the daytime, you're moving around, and so like um, I think it's just like the big weather thing because like you're moving around and you're like running and like doing up and down movements and patrolling or doing like like lanes or whatever, and like you're sweating, and then like you'll stop and be stopped for like 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and then you're like shivering because you're cold because you were just
Yeah.
sweating,
Right.
and then you like take off warmer layers, put on warmer layers, take off warmer layers, put on warmer layers, and like you don't want your warmer layers to get wet because then they just stay wet,
Yeah.
and so it kind of sucked.
Probably bringing back a bunch of old memories, huh?
Hey, I posted something on my Snapchat. And I was like, this reminds me of the good old days,
Yeah.
uh, out doing patrols and stuff like that. But um, yeah, it definitely sucked, but like we go to the field tomorrow, and we're gonna be getting out there for another few days doing some call for fire stuff. So that'll be fun. It won't be as physically demanding as like last week, but it'll be good to just get out there. They say it's supposed to rain. I hope it doesn't, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No kidding.
but the Marine Corps motto, like you ain't training if it ain't raining.
Right.
Ah,
Yeah.
But when it's cold
The
outside,
two eight.
it's a
Yeah.
different.
The
Yeah,
2-8 rain cloud. Anytime you
yeah,
go out,
yeah,
I think
yeah,
every unit probably. I feel like every infantry unit had a rain cloud. They'd say that was their rain cloud, but
yeah. I
it.
think just Camp Lejeune itself was
Yeah.
like, I don't know, situated on like, I don't know, a swamp or something where they were
Yeah.
like, it's just gonna rain all the time.
It did.
yeah.
So yeah,
That's insane, man.
yeah.
So what do you tell, what would you say to, young men and women out there right now wanting to join the Marine Corps? Like, what would you be like? What would be the advice?
Um, my advice would be um, stay motivated. Um, know that you are coming or like know that like the Marine Corps is like an organization of professionals. Know that it's not going to be like you're just gonna go and have fun all the time because like a lot of times it's gonna suck. But for the most part, like you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for your Marines. If you're an officer, you're doing it for all of your Marines. If you're enlisted, you're doing it for the Marines to the left and to the right of you. Never in front, never behind, but you're always next to each other. Um, so know that it's a team effort, no matter what. Like teamwork makes the dream work. If you're in charge of the team, you're still a team member. You know, and if you're on the team, then know that no matter what it is, it's not always going to be about you, and that it's not always going to be fun, but it's definitely rewarding working with other people that are like-minded and want to get out there and get after it and be like motivated. And that's probably like the one thing that I would be able to say that's like kept me in the Marine Corps, like being around other people that are like motivated to like do their everyday job. No matter if it's like logistics or intel or infantry or like you know being a doc, like just being motivated and positive is like take things a long way.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think you're in an extraordinary position, man. So how do you and some of the other Marines view the United States in its current state right now? And you don't have to
Um,
answer that. I know that's kind of like,
yeah, yeah. I would say a easy way to say it, um, politically, I guess, correct way would be to say that, like, I think that out of my short 34 years of being on the earth here in the Marine Corps or in the United States, and being in the Marine Corps for the last 14 years, I definitely feel that like our country is the most divided that it's ever been. As long as I've been conscious about division amongst people. And I feel like it has to be something that's handled from the top down, uh, because people are naturally, I would say, like, people are naturally like selfish or cautious, of other people. And if a leader is not openly being, I guess, um, if your leader, if a person that's in charge of you is not telling you, hey, we need to constantly, you know, stay united. We need to constantly be aware of other people. We need to constantly, be open minded. Especially being America, like, we are all mixed of something. Like, we're not just all one race. Like, we are all Americans. We're all come from different heritages and backgrounds. And so, like, that's one of the awesome things, great things about being an American, is that, like, we're all different. Um, but I would say definitely now it's like the most divided that I've ever known it to be, as far as like being an adult and being conscious of like the greater the greater world, or the greater country, like the greater outlook on like what is America, and like how do people in New York feel versus people in Florida versus people in New Mexico versus people in Washington. So that's just my personal, I guess, political answer.
Do you feel does any of that resonate? Do you feel like it? Do you feel that amongst the people you're around? Do they? Because I remember when we were in, obviously there was a big election during that time. I think right before Afghanistan it was, right, the
Yep,
oh 08
yep.
the oh 08 election. And I don't remember. I know that was a big deal and time for our country at that time, and I don't. Maybe it was just because of the mission we had in front of us. I don't remember
Hmm.
that really resonating through any of the guys that were around me. No one
No,
talked about anything. Nobody
no.
really had opinions on anything. They just knew what they were there for. And I kind of just I wonder, is it still similar to that? With the guys you're in and around, or are they more opinionated about things?
Definitely more opinionated about everything.
Yeah.
Everybody has an opinion about how they feel things are going or have went, or how they feel like it should look like. And so it's one of those fine lines that you kind of have to tread, as being like one, like, a person that's been like in the military, a person that's like seen a lot of different things and done a lot of different things. Um, and also it's a lot different because a lot of those people that I would say like are my peers now, like they this is their first taste of the military.
Right.
They haven't been in the military for a long time, so they're coming straight out of like this, um this world of like, hey, like, my opinion is blah blah blah, and this is why, like, I feel like you should listen to me, or something like that. Which, in some ways it's good to be able to voice your opinion, and like let other people know how you feel. And so, yeah, I definitely feel like it's a thing nowadays.
Yeah.
um but yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I know when I was operating out there in Kabul, man, a lot of those diplomats would, the liberal or the neoliberal narrative, this dislike for the commander in chief, and we weren't in no position to really, entangle our opinions or our beliefs or our current systems into that kind of a framework, just because we were professionals, and when you're getting paid, so it doesn't really matter what they have to think. You're there to protect.
Yeah.
So that's got to be a trip, man.
Yeah.
I know too, and I keep sharing with a lot of the folks. I don't know, like, not that my opinions matter, or not that my perspective matters, but I do try to be as objective as I possibly can. But core superpowers have done a lot of damage to our information ecosystem. They literally sow
Yeah.
division. So the perspective of a lot of Americans, and in between, the use of psychographics, the use of acquiring data point sets to understand what people are thinking, and then the exploitation of AI machine learning by developing the human assets and by creating the social groups, and actually providing the memes and the narratives to say, hey, look, this particular group is better than this particular group, or just twisting everyone's words. That encompasses like around 247 million Americans who are on some form of social media. So the chances of you, developing some kind of an emotional response to a piece of information is probably caused by second, third order effects from the Russians, from the Chinese, from people who have been manipulated or subverted to think that kind of way. And I really, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I would really, I definitely agree with that. A lot of stuff that people are, I guess, the way a lot of people feel, or the way a lot of people voice their opinion is always because of something that they heard, from like the internet or from the radio or something like that, or from what they saw. And so I feel like we are on our end, it's a bad end. We're at the perfect, we're in the perfect environment for somebody to be able, like anybody, say from a different country, to say, hey, this is this and blah blah blah, and this is that and blah blah blah, and then us receiving it and being like, oh yeah, I can kind of see that, and like, oh yeah, this kind of sucks, and blah blah blah, and then like it it make us have that emotional response, and so that's why I feel that no matter, I guess, no matter what the issue is, like we have to look out for each other. We have to be like, we have to know that everybody's different and that everybody has a different background. And I feel that like it might be a thing now, but I feel like it might definitely be a thing later, because the new generation, like the new generation, like people that are like 10, 12, 15 years old, that are growing up, and they grew up in like this information age, they've been flooded with all this stuff, and like they don't even know what to really think about as far as like what is true, what isn't true. Like, I've heard all this stuff and like it can all be true, or like, I don't believe this stuff, or I have an opinion about this. And so I feel like it can really cause in like inter conflict, between people that we shouldn't even really be dealing with stuff like this, but it is what it is, and so you just got to stay united no matter what.
Yeah,
for sure.
So let me ask you another question, and this might be kind of like out of bounds, but how does the Marine Corps respond to? So there's kind of like this, I call it, I was really introduced to this concept, but they call it alternative reality games. And really since what, like 2017, 2018, maybe earlier than that, like QAnon, the conspiracy theory that really just kind of envelops all the conspiracy theories. How does the Marine Corps fight back against those kinds of narratives pervading military service?
Um, I I'm not exactly sure, but just from my personal experience, like a lot of things nowadays have been like referred to doctrine, like referred to the pub. Like, hey, somebody has like, hey, why are we doing this? We're doing it because, this is what it says that we should be doing in the pub. And then like overarching, this is what makes sense. And so like the information age is a big thing now in the Marine Corps, or I guess in the military in general, but especially in the Marine Corps, having people post pictures and videos about stuff, or respond to different things. And every once in a while you hear like, oh, like, Marine reservists, gets in trouble for doing something, or prior Marine, or Marine, does this, or is a part of a specific, like specific group, or is doing something with weapons, and doing something negative. It's definitely been a black eye on the Marine Corps as a whole, and we even have like our own, like public affairs, like PO, like PO. They have people that work with Facebook, and and have an Instagram page and stuff like that, to keep everyone more aware. So like part of our annual training that we have to do every year, like we have something. Part of our annual training nowadays is being like understanding. I forgot like the actual name for it, but um, it's like being aware of uh, what's the word? It's like social media awareness is the name. And so like they go into a whole thing about, hey, this is what you should say, what you shouldn't say, like things that you should trust or shouldn't trust, or sources that should could be aware of, or sources that you should think twice about, or something like that. So the
Yeah,
social media awareness is a big thing.
that's crazy. I'm sure probably, on your limo briefs and stuff like that, or, that's probably a big part of it now when people are
Oh
going
yeah.
home for 96s. They're like, don't be posting stupid shit on, Facebook and
Oh yeah.
Instagram.
Oh
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
How do y'all
Hey, I'm
deal with?
gonna have to.
Oh, go
I'm
ahead,
gonna have
bro.
to go here in a little bit. I'm holding a squad leader billet for the next 2 weeks, and so I got some stuff that I have to work with my squad with. But
Yeah, you
I
got
still
to
have a
be up
few
at
minutes.
2 in the morning. What you got to be up at 2 in the morning, boy?
Yeah, buddy. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
man.
yeah. I
Nice.
gotta go through and I gotta check or have my team leaders check all, like, make sure everybody's gear is all good. Um, I just finished all of my gear, and so I should be good. But I gotta have my team ensure that everybody has their gear, make sure everybody's back, make sure nobody's gotten in trouble over the weekend.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, yeah,
Well, we appreciate your time, man.
yeah,
yeah.
for
Uh,
And
sure.
hey, I'm definitely down to continue the conversation some other time, most definitely.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Appreciate
yeah,
you coming on here and sharing a little bit with us.
yeah.
That was fun, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it feels good to, like I said in the very beginning, it feels good just to talk about things. Especially with, my peers, from way back in the day. People that, we've been through the same thing, and so, we have a different, I guess, outlook or perspective on life as a whole.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so, how we view things is a lot different than how things are, I guess, viewed from individuals nowadays. So it
Absolutely.
Yeah,
feels good to
yeah,
like be able to break bread with you guys and see you guys in person and hang out and talk and stuff.
for sure. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah.
man.
Well, take care, brother. Be safe out there
Yep.
in the field doing everything. And
We'll
I guess
do. We'll
I
do.
guess I owe you one of those, huh?
Yeah, man.
Oh yeah.